Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hip Knit Hooray Online, and today we're going to be chatting about tanks and tops that I've knit that I absolutely love, would highly recommend, as well as starting to think about what I'm going to be looking forward to for summer knitting, some goals, yarns that I'm interested in using, all of that. So let's get started. So in the first part of this very limited series, I started chatting about tops that I have knit that I don't love. So I guess knit flops. For whatever reason, either the yarn, the fit, the process, I just don't really like those summer tops. And I find that tops that I actually do really like through this exercise are really few and far in between. There's not that many tops that I've knit in the past that I absolutely love wearing. So I realized that in 2022 and 2023 I knit several summer tanks, but I don't actually wear a lot of them. And even last year I think I knit 7 or 8 tops, and only one of them I actually really love, which I'm going to be talking about today. And so I thought that I really needed to just sit down and reflect on my past makes to kind of understand what I actually really look for in a summer garment, whether or not it's knitted or not, and how I can kind of apply that in practice and start knitting more summer pieces that I actually really like, because I do want to become more of a summer knitter and be excited about a lot of summer designs, because lately, I don't know, after seeing the ones that I actually really love, I'm realizing that I don't have that many designs that I'm really looking forward to at the moment. So I just thought in this video, let's talk about those ones and then start looking forward to yarns that I might be interested in trying because of the composition, types of designs or silhouettes that I really like. So this is a video where I'm just going to be chatting a little bit more casually like that. My summer knitting plans with stash yarn, my favorite kind of video to make, is going to be coming later, but this is kind of just my first take at starting to think about summer knitting. So I think that's enough of an introduction, and maybe let's get started with the first top. So I'm actually going to start with the best of the best for myself. This is my favorite knit top that I've ever knit, maybe even my favorite garment. I absolutely love this camisole. I knit this in 2022, and this is the Pie Camisole by Creadia Studio. I am super proud of this knitted top. I absolutely love wearing it. I've worn it at least a few dozen times. I wear this top a lot. It's held up pretty well considering how much I've kind of put it through. It is Knitting for Olive Merino in the shade Licorice. And it's knit on, I knit this actually on 2mm needles, so a very fine gauge. The pattern calls for 2.5mm needles, but at the time when I was knitting this, I could achieve gauge with 2mm needles, which was a little unfortunate because they're such tiny thin needles. I think now I could maybe do like 2.25 now that I have that needle size for socks, so I could probably knit this at a bit of a larger gauge, but at the time I had to size down to 2 because that's all I had, and that's how I best met gauge. For this camisole, I was part of the test knit group, and this was my first time knitting a Creadia Studio pattern, and I really like her pattern writing style. Just love all of her designs that she comes out with. She has a very similar camisole to this one, the May camisole that she came out with last year, and I'm thinking of knitting that one actually, but I do really love this silhouette. And I knit the size extra small. It is a little cropped though. I unintentionally knit this about 10 centimeters shorter than what it should be. So I don't really know what happened, but I knit this camisole to the length that was specified in the pattern, or I think I knit it 5 centimeters shorter than what was intended in the pattern. We were able to modify the length of the camisole, so I shortened it by 5 centimeters, but over time and with wear it shrunk another 5 centimeters. It does have, I guess, a bit more of a fitted look, so maybe that's why it kind of shrinks when you wear it. I don't really know, but it is quite cropped right now. And I didn't really mean to do that. I think just with wear it's gotten a lot smaller. So if I were to knit this again, I would just add a little bit more length to this one. I still find it okay. I wear it with high-waisted skirts or jeans, and it's still fine, but yeah, it is a little bit cropped, especially when I raise my arms. So yeah, other than that, I really love this camisole. It definitely takes a little bit of time, and you do have to take some more frequent breaks because of the smaller gauge, or at least I did, but I think it's totally worth it. The finished fabric is so nice. I know it's going to be kind of hard to see because I knit it with black, but the neckline is 1x1 rib. The armhole edge here is a 1x1 rib. The bottom is a thick 1x1 rib as well. And it's just such a nice finish. I think this top is almost feels like store-bought to me in like a good way, I guess, just because of the finished finer gauge. It's just very comfortable, and it is knit top down, so it's really easy to modify the length. Yeah, I just really like how the neckline sits and fits. It's just really comfortable. This is an absolute 10 out of 10. I'd highly recommend this camisole to anyone who wants to knit it, because it's definitely my favorite knitted thing that I've ever made. So that was everything for the pie camisole. Absolutely love that one. And the second top that I wanted to talk about is the Cumulus Tee by Petite knit. And there are a few times where I will actually knit garment twice. I always say that I want to, like whenever I finish project and I really like it, I always say I can't wait to knit my second one, but there's actually few times in reality where I actually do that, and I think it's because there's just so many things that I want to knit, new designs that are catching my eye, or just things that are on my to knit list for a long time, so I just never really get around to knitting an actual second version of that pattern. And so when I do, I think it just really speaks to how much I like that pattern and garment. And I knit two versions of the Cumulus Tee. So the first one here is, I knit this in 2022, and I used Knitting for Olive Merino, I think in petroleum blue. I'll put the shade name down below just to confirm. But yeah, this one I knit with merino. I knit the size small, so it has a little bit more ease, and I knit it with a short sleeve version, not as long as in the pattern. In the pattern there's a pretty long sleeve. It's still a short sleeve, but it's longer, but I chose to do a bit of a shorter one, and I did do some modifications to that. But yeah, this is a short sleeve version. And then the second one that I knit last year is the size extra small, so a little bit more fitted, mainly because I didn't have a lot of yarn, so I wanted to maximize that. And I used Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in the shade Putty. So for this first version, I'm actually thinking of extending the sleeves on this to be 3/4 length like this one, because I do have some of it left over in scrap, so I can always just extend this to however much of the scrap yarn that I have left. And the reason why is I find that I do really love this construction just in general. I love the Cumulus Tee construction because it's a top-down raglan, so it's just a really easy, enjoyable knit. It's on 3mm needles. It's a nice, really simple, relaxing stockinette project to have. And because of the raglan construction, I find that there's not a lot of excess bulk for a fingering weight tee. With something that's drop shoulder, I find that you do get a bit of excess fabric in the underarm, but with this raglan, it's very seamless and very lightweight. There's no bulk at the bottom, so I really like the fit along the shoulders for this tee. And with the 3/4 length, I just find that it's such a great layering piece for cooler summer evenings. Whenever I'm going out and I think it's going to get a bit cooler, I always just grab my Cumulus blouse in the putty off-white because it just goes with everything. It's the 3/4 length, so it will keep me warm when it's not that cold outside, and then the neutral shade just goes with everything. So I'm actually thinking of extending the length of this one this summer, so it'll be a fix that I do later on this year. In terms of how the merino compares to the cotton merino, I would say that the cotton merino, because there's cotton in it, as you would think that the yarn is a little bit more breathable. I do think it is. I don't get as hot with this tee, and it is, even like feeling the yarn here, it's a little bit more cool to the touch. So I would recommend using the cotton merino for knitted garments like this, but there is more shade selection with the merino, and I feel like it's still like a pretty nominal difference. This one is definitely warmer, but it's not super warm where you can't wear it as a summer garment. At least in my experience living in Toronto, this is still pretty comfortable. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit warmer. So there's so many things about the Cumulus Tee that I love. I love the construction, I love the finer gauge. I like using knitting for olive, merino and cotton merino for summer garments. The only thing about this top or tee that I don't love is the V neckline. I think it's still okay. I think in my flops video I mentioned that I'm a little bit more particular now about V necklines, and this one I still do like it on me, but I saw that Petite Knit came out with a O-neck or round neck version of the Cumulus Tee. I don't think I'm going to purchase that because it has a very similar fit to this one. So I feel like you could just, if you already have the Cumulus Tee, you could probably just modify the neckline so you join it together a little bit sooner. At least I think it's a pretty simple mod to do. So I probably wouldn't get that new version as a separate standalone pattern, but if I were to knit a third version of this Cumulus Tee, I would probably do a round neck version, and maybe in like a black or gray, just to be another neutral that I can wear as that light layer over things in the summertime. So yeah, really like my Cumulus Tees. And the third summer garment that I absolutely love, as I mentioned, there's not that many. So this is the last one that I wanted to talk about, is the Ingrid top by Gregoria Fibres. So I knit this top in 2022 and I used Creadia Mississippi 3 for this yarn. I don't remember the shade name. I got it. It was a basement yarn that was on sale at Romney Wools. So this was a pretty affordable piece. I think each of those balls of yarn were about $3. So this top was less than $10 to make. And I really like the lace motif of this top. I found the process was a little bit tough. I did have to do some modifications because I knit this off gauge, and I just found that some of the finishing on this top wasn't my favorite. So I do really love how the top looks, but also I did have some issues with the pattern. This is the only, I think this is the only pattern that I have knit from Gregoria Fibres, so I can't speak to all of her patterns if this is the case for all of them, but I did find that it was a little bit confusing the way it was written at certain points, and I didn't like the bind off. So with this top, you knit it from the top down, you knit the back panel, and then you knit the front panel, then you join in the round, and then you knit the body, and then you pick up stitches after that for the armhole. It's a pretty deep armhole, and you work a few rounds of stockinette, and then you do a Russian bind off. I just really didn't like the way that it looked. I found that it curled a little bit, and also it just looked a little unfinished, like at least to me. So I wanted to do a modification. I ended up doing a really tiny folded over folded hem. So I think I knit about like 6 rows or something like that, and then I just knit it down, and I found it just added a little bit more of a cleaner finish to the armhole. So I made a modification there. I also knit this off gauge, as I mentioned. So just looking at my notes here, I knit this on 3.5mm needles, and I knit a size large because I was knitting this top in fingering weight cotton yarn, and I think it's cotton merino yarn. And that's another thing. This top is intended to be, I believe, a DK or worsted weight, but I knit this in fingering weight, and I think that's the reason why I really like this top. I think I'm realizing from all 3 of these that I really like finer gauge. So I did knit this off gauge to the pattern. I did have to do some modifications, but I really like the finished object, which is why I still wanted to talk about it being a favorite top that I've knit. But yeah, it's a little bit different, or quite a bit different, I guess, from the original pattern sample. The stitch pattern is really fun to work up. This is a really nice, I think, first lace project. These eyelets here are done all across the body of the top. And it could just be in my head, but I find that because of that, this top is a little bit more breezy. So it's really nice to wear when it's really warm outside, and I think it adds some nice visual interest. So I do really like this top, and I like all of the Ingrid series. I know Gregoria Fibres also has the Ingrid sweater, the Ingrid cardigan. So yeah, there's a ton of other garments with this stitch pattern design, which I think is really fun to knit up. So those were all of the summer tops that I really love, and I realized that there isn't that many, and it kind of makes me upset a little bit because I've knit quite a few tops and I actually don't love that many of them. But I think it's good to just think about this, the flops and the faves, and just have more of a plan for summer knitting this year. So thinking of it in terms of both design and yarn, the first thing is the necklines. So I realized that I don't really like deep V-neck, scoop neck, or square necklines on myself personally. I still really like a thinner top, or not really thinner top, but like a thinner strap top, because it is more comfortable when it's really hot outside. But I do prefer a higher neckline, I think, for those designs. So I was Googling different necklines because I feel like I didn't have the right terminology, or just didn't really realize how many high neckline options there are out there. So I'll be looking more at a higher crew neck, tank, a high neck or a mock neck, definitely halter tops, and something a little bit more unique. And I'd love any pattern suggestions below on anything related to this. But keyhole neckline, I know Sophie of the Knit Pearl Girl had a top last summer. I believe it was the crescendo top that had a keyhole neckline at the back, or not a neckline, but a keyhole detail at the back, and I'd love it at the front as a cool statement. I just haven't really seen that done yet. I haven't come across it, so if you know of any, I'd love to know. One shoulder design, I'm thinking of the fresco top by White Thread Design, but if you know of any others, I'd love to know. And then a asymmetrical one. I don't really have a specific vision or idea for that one at all, but I know Wool and Beyond has been hinting on her stories of a new summer top design that is like a knotted detail, and it's a halter, and I'm really intrigued by that one. But something really unique, like a really cool statement piece with a high neckline silhouette, I'm really looking forward to this summer. And the next is the yarn composition. So I'm realizing that I really do like, from these tops that I love, fingering or sport weight gauge, and a merino or merino cotton blend. So something that has stretch but is breathable still is really important for knitted garments, at least for summer wear. And that's not always the case in my past projects. I didn't always use breathable or stretchy yarn. So moving forward, definitely going to try to stick to just those. Ones that I really liked were Knitting for Olive merino and Knitting for Olive cotton merino, but I actually, apart from that, I don't have that many other suggestions or ones that I really like. I know I'm still on my low buy year, so I'm not saying I'm going to be getting these for this summer, but ones that I am intrigued by and I'm interested in, I'll just give the list right now. Sandnes Garn Tynn line, which is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen, and it's a fingering weight, so 220 meters for every 50 grams. And I have been really intrigued by Sandnes Garn Tynn line. I really like how it's a thinner version of the Sandnes Garn line, which I think is pretty popular. I think the composition is really interesting, the viscose and linen blend, and they have some really great shades. Like I've been looking at Sunny Lime, there's one called Spicy Orange, and just their classic black. I also think it's pretty affordable. It's $8 or $8 Canadian dollars a ball for me to purchase at my one of my local yarn stores. So I'm really interested in that option. There's the Oenling No. 15, which is 100% merino wool, and it's a sport weight. It's 175 meters for every 50 grams. And Oenling No. 15 has a decent amount of neutral and bright shades. I have right here Oenling No. 11, which is super fine merino wool and cashmere, and it's super soft. and I think it's a really high quality yarn, so I'd be interested in trying different yarn from Oenling. Shipping was pretty fast as well to get here, so I know that I think you can just purchase, or at least from Canada, you can only purchase from their website. I haven't seen it carried in any store here, so it might be a little bit harder to get, but shipping was pretty quick, so interested in that one. Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, so I've already tried the merino and cotton merino. I haven't tried the pure silk, which is 100% silk, as the name suggests. It has the same meterage as those two. It's 250 meters for every 50 grams, and I was looking at shades like Bark, Pink Daisies, which I think came out last year, and then Putty as well, just because I really like this more cool toned off-white. So was looking at that. I'm really intrigued by pure silk, and it's relatively accessible for me to get here in Canada. And the last one I want to try, I actually have in stash already, so I'm definitely going to be trying to find a project that works for it. It's the Illimani Sabri, which is 85% cotton and 15% baby alpaca. I actually haven't seen a yarn with this combination before, so I'm really intrigued with the cotton and alpaca blend. And based off of my knitted flops, some of the tanks, I am a little bit worried to work with a majority cotton yarn for summer garments, but I think this one, just based off of how it feels, it's not as stiff or heavy, maybe because it's a fingering weight, maybe because of the composition with the alpaca, but it's not as stiff or heavy as the other cottons that I've used in the past. So I have a light gray in my stash, but they also have a decent range for summer tops and projects. I always thought that they only had a natural or undyed line, so maybe 4 or 5 shades, but maybe since I purchased it a few years ago, I purchased the Sabri over 3 years ago now. I purchased it in Montreal when I went there. So when I went, I think they only had those undyed shades, but I just saw on their website today that they now have more colors. It's still a little bit more limited, but they do have some more neutral and just very saturated yarn colors, so it's still nice to have that option if you wanted a little bit more color, but I really like all of the undyed shades in this yarn, and I'm really excited to try that out. And the last 2 things I want to quickly mention about summer knitting moving forward is I'm going to try to stick to finer gauge and smaller needle sizes. I think that kind of relates to the yarns that I'm interested in trying. Those are all fingering weight, but I realized from the tops that I do really love wearing, they're all a very thin, finer gauge. So I'll try to stick to, at my smallest, I'll maybe do 2.25 millimeter needles, because the 2 millimeter needles for the Petite camisole was quite tough on the hands, and especially on the fingers too, because the needles are so sharp when you're pushing the work as you're knitting, or at least that's how I knit. So I found that the 2 millimeter needle was a little bit too pointy and kind of hurt my fingers a little bit, but it is worth the finished gauge and fabric. So I will go down to 2.25 if I need to for certain fabrics, but I think the highest I'll go is a 3.5 and maybe a 4 if there's a design that I really like. But I realize that a thinner gauge fabric is just kind of what I want to go for with summer garments. And the last thing is, as I'm holding this tee, but I'm going to try and go with more sleeveless designs in the future as well. I have my 2 Cumulus tees that I do really like wearing, but I actually prefer a more sleeveless top, especially for a knitted fabric that may have wool in it. I just find that it's a little bit more breathable and it's not as warm to have something sleeveless. So yeah, I'm going to try and stick with more sleeveless tops as well. So that was everything for these reflections. I hope this video was interesting. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much if you were just playing the video. I am going to start thinking more about my summer knitting plans with stash yarn soon, but I think this was a good first jumping off point to just really think about all the things that I've knit before and what I actually am going to value in a finished piece, because I realized that I have knit quite a few tops and tanks. I think almost as many as sweaters that I've knit, but I don't nearly reach for my knitted tops as much as my knitted sweaters. So I thought I really need to sit down and think about why. And so this was a really good exercise and reflection for myself. I think I have a pretty good plan moving forward. Obviously nothing is set in stone and things may change, but I really feel strongly that I want to stick to this plan for myself and start thinking more about silhouettes and compositions, especially for summer garments, because I think that that really matters for those pieces, whereas a sweater, I don't know, it can have like a little bit more positive ease. It could have a thinner or heavier gauge. There's just so much more variety with sweaters compared to, I just realized that I think I'm more particular with tops. So yeah, it was a good exercise. I think I'll stop rambling here. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm really looking forward to casting on my first summer project soon too, because I think for my upcoming trip, I'm going to knit a tank. So summer knitting is going to start very soon. I'm very excited for it. So with that, I will see you in my next video.